Section 19 of the Life of Samuel Johnson, Volume 1. This is a LibriVox recording. All LibriVox recordings are in the public domain. For more information or to volunteer, please visit LibriVox.org. The Life of Samuel Johnson, Volume 1, by James Boswell. Section 19. Dr. Adams expostulated with Johnson, and suggested that his not being admitted when he called on him was probably not to be imputed to Lord Chesterfield, for his lordship had declared to Dodsley that he would have turned off the best servant he ever had, if he had known that he denied him to a man who would have always been more than welcome. And in confirmation of this, he insisted on Lord Chesterfield's general affability and easiness of access, especially to literary men. "Sir," said Johnson, "that is not Lord Chesterfield. He is the proudest man this day existing." "No," said Dr. Adams, "there is one person at least as proud. I think by your own account you are the prouder man of the two." "But mine," replied Johnson instantly, "was defensive pride." This, as Dr. Adams well observed, was one of those happy turns for which he was so remarkably ready. Johnson, now having explicitly avowed his opinion of Lord Chesterfield, did not refrain from expressing himself concerning that nobleman with pointed freedom. "This man," said he, "I thought had been a lord among wits, but I find he is only a wit among lords." And when his letters to his natural son were published, he observed that they teach the morals of a whore and the manners of a dancing master. Note: that collection of letters cannot be vindicated from the serious charge of encouraging, in some passages, one of the vices most destructive to the good order and comfort of society, which his lordship represents as mere fashionable gallantry, and in others of inculcating the base practice of dissimulation, and recommending, with disproportionate anxiety, a perpetual attention to external elegance of manners. But it must at the same time be allowed that they contain many good precepts of conduct, and much genuine information upon life and manners, very happily expressed, and that there was considerable merit in paying so much attention to the improvement of one who was dependent upon his lordship's protection. It has probably been exceeded in no instance by the most exemplary parent, and though I can by no means approve of confounding the distinction between lawful and illicit offspring, which is in effect insulting the civil establishment of our country, to look no higher, I cannot help thinking it laudable to be kindly attentive to those of whose existence we have in any way been the cause. Mr. Stanhope's character has been unjustly represented as diametrically opposed to what Lord Chesterfield wished him to be. He has been called dull, gross, and awkward, but I knew him at Dresden, when he was envoy to that court, and though he could not boast of the graces, he was in truth a sensible, civil, well-behaved man. End of note. The character of a respectable Hottentot in Lord Chesterfield's letters has been generally understood to be meant for Johnson, and I have no doubt that it was. But I remember when the literary property of those letters was contested in the Court of Session in Scotland, and Mr. Henry Dundas, one of the counsel for the proprietors, read this character as an exhibition of Johnson. Sir David Dalrymple, Lord Hailes, one of the judges, maintained with some warmth that it was not intended as a portrait of Johnson, but of a late noble lord, distinguished for abstruse science. I have heard Johnson himself talk of the character, and say that it was meant for George, Lord Lyttelton, which I could by no means agree, for his lordship had nothing of that violence which is a conspicuous feature in the composition. Finding my illustrious friend could bear to have it supposed that it might be meant for him, I said laughingly that there was one trait which unquestionably did not belong to him. He throws his meat anywhere but down his throat. "Sir," said he, "Lord Chesterfield never saw me eat in his life." On the 6th of March came out Lord Bolingbroke's works, published by Mr. David Mallet. The wild and pernicious ravings, under the name of philosophy, which were thus ushered into the world, gave great offence to all well-principled men. Johnson, hearing of their tendency, which nobody disputed, was roused with a just indignation, and pronounced this memorable sentence upon the noble author and his editor: Sir, he was a scoundrel and a coward. A scoundrel for charging a blunderbuss against religion and morality, a coward because he had not resolution to fire it off himself, but let half a crown to a beggarly Scotchman to draw the trigger after his death. Garrick, who I can attest from my own knowledge had his mind seasoned with pious reverence, and sincerely disapproved of the infidel writings of several, whom in the course of his almost universal gay intercourse with men of eminence he treated with external civility, distinguished himself upon this occasion. Mr. Pelham having died on the very day on which Lord Bolingbroke's works came out, he wrote an elegant ode on his death, beginning, "Let others hail the rising sun, I bow to that whose course is run," in which is the following stanza: "The same sad morn to church and state, so for our sins 'twas fixed by fate, a double stroke was given, black as the whirlwinds of the north. St. John's fell genius issued forth, and Pelham fled to heaven." Johnson this year found an interval of leisure to make an excursion to Oxford, for the purpose of consulting the libraries there. Of this and of many interesting circumstances concerning him, during a part of his life when he conversed but little with the world, I am enabled to give a particular account, by the liberal communication of the Reverend Mr. Thomas Warton, who obligingly furnished me with several of our common friends' letters, which he illustrated with notes. These I shall insert in their proper places. To the Reverend Mr. Thomas Warton. Sir, it is but an ill return for the book with which you were pleased to favour me, to have delayed my thanks for it till now. I am too apt to be negligent, but I can never deliberately show my disrespect to a man of your character, and I now pay you a very honest acknowledgment, for the advancement of the literature of our native country. You have shown to all who shall hereafter attempt the study of our ancient authors the way to success, by directing them to the perusal of the books which those authors had read. Of this method Hughes and men much greater than Hughes seem never to have thought. The reason why the authors, which are yet read, of the 16th century are so little understood, is that they are read alone, and no help is borrowed from those who lived with them or before them. Some part of this ignorance I hope to remove by my book, which now draws towards its end, but which I cannot finish, to my mind, without visiting the libraries at Oxford, which I therefore hope to see in a fortnight. I know not how long I shall stay, or where I shall lodge, but I shall be sure to look for you at my arrival, and we shall easily settle the rest. I am, dear Sir, your most obedient, etc., Sam Johnson. London, July 16th, 1754. Of his conversation while at Oxford at this time, Mr. Warton preserved and communicated to me the following memorial, which, though not written with all the care and attention which that learned and elegant writer bestowed on those compositions which he intended for the public eye, is so happily expressed in an easy style, that I should injure it by any alteration. When Johnson came to Oxford in 1754, the long vacation was beginning, and most people were leaving the place. This was the first time of his being there after quitting the university. The next morning after his arrival, he wished to see his old college, Pembroke. I went with him. He was highly pleased to find all the college servants which he had left there still remaining, particularly a very old butler, and expressed great satisfaction at being recognized by them, and conversed with them familiarly. He waited on the master, Dr. Radcliffe, who received him very coldly. Johnson at least expected that the master would order a copy of his dictionary, now near publication, but the master did not choose to talk on the subject, never asked Johnson to dine, nor even to visit him, while he stayed at Oxford. After we had left the lodgings, Johnson said to me, "There lives a man who lives by the revenues of literature, and will not move a finger to support it. If I come to live at Oxford, I shall take up my abode at Trinity." We then called on the Reverend Mr. Meek, one of the fellows, and of Johnson's standing. Here was a most cordial greeting on both sides. On leaving him, Johnson said, I used to think Meek had